not despise small beginnings. I've seen God use the small to make just great. And so that's exactly where you two are going.
It starts as a seed, it grows into a bush, the bush turns into a tree, and the tree attracts everything it needs, and it covers territory. You see the tree that's inside the seed. I give him permission to put this seed in the ground in LA, in California, in the United States, in North America, and in the world.
All right, many blessings, friends. Pastor Halton here from House 633, and it is so good to be back. We've been off the air for the last 3 weeks as we basically engage in internal dealings of the church here. Yeah. But I'm happy to be back, and I'm being joined today by two very special people, so I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. We'll start with David.
Been a while since I've been up here, so probably forgot who I am. I'm David. Husband, father, son. So
son-in-law,
disciple.
Let's go. Yeah, so God bless you guys. My name's Andy. It's really good to be back with you guys. Like our pastor was saying, like we only have so much time during the week. So we've chosen to take Wednesdays to kind of work with the core of the church and make things better for you guys, honestly, and for everybody else that comes to our church. So that way the mentorship can get better, the quality of our services can get better. So overall, it's just really great being back here with you guys because we do know that a big part of our, what'd you call it? Of our congregation is online. So we're just glad to be back with you guys. And like always, we just pray that this conversation blesses you guys. May it cause some conflict in everybody because the kingdom always does. But conflict is good because it means that there's growth happening.
Hey, man. So, I mean, for the last 2 months, we've been on this identity series, I Am, But Are You? And we've been touching a lot of points that have really basically caused us to question, kind of challenged us and pushed us. So today's conversation is on identity, and we wanted to be able to touch this because identity is something that affects every individual. There are currently 8 billion people on planet Earth, and a small percentage really knows who they are. Right. So when we talk about identity, we usually find people that don't connect with their true self. They connect with either their possessions or their career or what they're doing in life. So they'll tell you, I'm a police officer, I'm a firefighter, I'm a nurse, I'm a business owner, but they never tell you who they really are. And in order for us to be able to be effective in the kingdom of God, we have to be able to know who we are, where we came from, how we were equipped and designed by God to be able to operate and be able to be functional in our assignments, aka our purpose, right? So a lot of people want to do the will of God, and a lot of people want to go out there and fulfill their purpose and be able to bring glory and honor to God, but they're having a hard time because they still can't connect back to who they truly are. Right. You know, they bump into all of these barriers that life throws at them. They past traumas, past situations, obstacles, just things that they're struggling with, and it doesn't allow them to fully engage in what God has really called them to do. So they spend most of their time struggling with things they shouldn't struggle with, simply because they can't reconnect back with the spirit of man that God created. So when we talk about identity, what do you guys think about that, or what, any insight or input?
Mr. David?
Well, I was, doing some brushing up today and listening to some of the first parts of the series. And one of the things that you had said was that, in a way, the way we identify ourselves defines what we think about God. Mm-hmm. So I feel like
very good point.
That's a big key about understanding our identity. Of course, going back to Genesis 1:26, and that we were made in His image and in His likeness. So a lot of the times, like you were saying, I was listening to some other message too, even Miles, and he was talking about, like most times you ask people like, oh, who are you? And they'll tell you, oh, like I'm a nurse, oh, I'm a doctor. And he's like, no, but who are you? Like, that's just your career, that's just your profession. And many of us at some point, and many people are still suffering, lack of identity. Which, of course, like we've known, everybody wants to feel like they have a purpose, or they want to know what their purpose in life is, but you can't even get to that point if you don't really understand identity.
Right.
That's good. But before you go, can you read that point that you touched again?
I put down here that the way we identify ourselves defines what we think about God.
Man, that is so good. We'll break that down for all of you guys that are joining us. If you guys have any questions, definitely engage with us. You can put your question down here on the live. We'll do our best to answer right away, or to just ask that question on air and be able to answer it. But we do ask you guys to help us by liking the page and by sharing it so that we can get this message out. I believe that everybody needs to hear this message because everybody is struggling with their identity in one way or another. So, what David is saying, that how, can you read that again?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that was a really good point. So, yeah, it was one of the first parts of the series that he said that the way we identify ourselves defines what we think about God.
Yes, that is so important, such a big key, because if we can't identify ourselves, if we don't truly know who we are, where we come from, what our heritage or history is, and I'm not talking about where we were born, like the country we were born, or the family that we come from, or the family that where we landed here on earth. I'm talking about our origins, because we should not confuse our flesh with who we are. Our spirit is eternal, and our spirit was with God from the beginning. So if we can't reconnect ourselves back all the way back to God, then we're going to view ourselves in an unfavorable way, which is going to cause so many obstacles. And that's what's happening today in the world. When we talk to people about who I am or what my identity is, the majority of people, the first thing that comes to their mind is I'm a sinner. Right. And I hear a lot of people saying that to me. I'm a sinner. I'm a person in need of the mercy and the kindness of God. I'm a person that wouldn't be here if God wouldn't have shown His kindness, His mercy. And in essence, I'm going to say that that's 50% true. But in reality is that we're not sinners. Right. And that is a conflict. Because when you tell people you weren't created a sinner, they go automatically back to their current condition. And they're like, but I am a sinner. Look at what I'm doing. But that's because they can't identify themselves as far as like how they were created. We weren't created sinners. We weren't created to be dealing or struggling with the sins that we commit. And I want to just... before I let you guys talk, I just want to be able to break down this word sin, because when people talk about sin, they automatically also think about drinking, smoking, adultery, fornication, homosexuality. They go over to all of these sins, but sin simply means missing the mark. Right. Meaning that you're not where God wants you to be, and you're not doing what God wants you to do. So you can be a person that's not practicing all of these common sins and still be in sin. Right. So we need to be able to come back to our identity so that we can be able to activate in our assignment and our purpose. And that's where we come along, and we're trying to help every believer, because the majority of the believers, they're in a church right now. Right. And they might not be practicing sinners in the sense that they're not doing all of these things, but they're just sitting down waiting for the trumpet. Right. And they're just sitting down waiting for Christ to come back. And they might think, hey, I'm good because I no longer do all of these things. I'm just gonna sit quietly in the church. I'm gonna worship. I'm gonna clap. I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna read my Bible. I'm gonna pray. But you never activate in your purpose. Right. So in turn, in the eyes of God, what that means is that you're still a sinner. Right. Because you're still missing the mark. Yeah. You might not be doing these things, but you're not doing what I have asked and called you for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you guys said a lot there, but just kind of to reiterate some of the points that we've been talking about. I think this identity series has been so key and so important because, like you were saying in the beginning, so many of the problems that we face and so many of the problems that the youth faces, even the older generation that everybody faces, is mostly this lack of purpose in life. Mm-hmm. Is this lack of what am I supposed to do here? Why did God put me here? So many times we like to focus on just that. Like, Lord, what's my purpose? Like what am I supposed to do? All these things that you gave me, what am I supposed to do with them? And we don't realize that the first thing we got to fix is our identity, because the reason that we can't get into our assignment and we can't get into our purpose is because we lack identity. And how you were saying that point was so good, because identity not only exposes and confronts the fact that you're not connected to God. It not only exposes the fact that you don't know who you are, but it exposes the fact that you don't know who you are because you really don't know who God is. And I think when you really confront yourself and when you really ask yourself that question is like, who is really God in my life? I believe, and that's what I've been trying to do, because that's the first step to repent. It's you need to acknowledge what you don't know or what you know or what you think you know and start fixing it. So for me, how David was saying, that's been one of the biggest keys is really realizing, okay, where is this disconnect? Because I say I believe in God, I say I know God, I say I love God, I say I want to do the will of God, but yet when it comes to me fulfilling purpose or me saying I am holy, I can't say it. When it comes to me saying I'm made in God's image, it's very hard for me to believe it because I don't believe in God yet, or I don't believe the fullness of God. So that's where I feel my identity has been really key.
I got a couple of points here that I wrote down. I'm pretty sure the statistics have probably changed and they're much higher than what I have written down here. But it says that more than 95% of people die without ever experiencing life, and then they go to the grave without ever knowing why they were here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, those statistics are pretty crazy,
Wild.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, we know people, we have families, we have brothers, we have sisters, we have cousins, we have friends, and we know people. Mm-hmm. So we know how confused people truly are because they're all around us. Even us that are coming here to the church and we're trying to learn this stuff, we struggle with it. Now imagine people that have zero connection to God. So that's why it says here that more than 95%. I believe that it's higher, to be honest with you. But I think they're being generous here with 95%.
Yeah.
But 95% of people die without ever experiencing life, meaning that they come into this world just to go to work, pay bills, and don't experience no satisfaction.
Right.
They die without ever experience what true joy, what true peace, what happiness is really, what happiness really is. They just come to life and they just get in this hamster wheel of just routine of getting up, going to work, paying the bills, getting into debt, go eat, go to sleep, and they wake up, and that's what they do for 40, 50 years. And they never find true satisfaction. So it says that these 95 people die without ever experiencing life, and then they go to the grave without ever knowing why they were here.
Right. Yeah, and I honestly do believe that percentage is a lot higher because you can easily tell by what message is being preached in churches. Mm-hmm. Because the only message that can bring you back to your identity, the only message that can give you a fulfilling, purpose-filled life is the message of the kingdom. So it's very easy to say and just look and hear, okay, who's preaching the true message of the kingdom? And we can see that 99% of churches just aren't. They're preaching other messages that are still good, about faith, prosperity, resurrection, peace, love, all these things which are great, but they never get you to purpose, to identity. And the problem with that, and again, like we've talked about this so many times, but a big reason why people get to just live these lives of just by the motions, go through it every single day, is because part of, and I'll say the church, but the church has kind of placed that mentality on everybody. It's like, hey, like, don't worry, what you don't have here, you'll get in heaven. Right. Don't worry, if you don't get to experience it here, you'll experience it one day. So instead of the church or the Bible saying, no, hey, the kingdom of heaven is now at hand, you can experience it now, the church has put everybody in the same position of saying, no, hey, you don't need to fight for it now. You don't need to work for it. You don't need to know who you are. You don't need to fulfill purpose or assignment because one day you'll eventually fulfill it. And that's what I believe has gotten a lot of people in that mode of like, yeah, I don't need to do anything here because one day I'll achieve it there. I don't need to repent. I don't need to do all these things because that'll happen later, like once I'm in heaven.
Well, and for me, I was going to get back to what you were talking about earlier about sin, being that you're missing the mark, which one of the first mandates that God gave us was to be fruitful, Mm-hmm. And as we've learned, to be in the kingdom, you have to be able to produce fruit, like as we were learning about this last Sunday, every tree produces fruit after its own kind, that seed will reproduce more trees of its own kind. Mm-hmm. So if we're not being fruitful, you know, like you said, you don't have to be smoking, you don't have to be drinking, you don't have to be doing any of these other things that most people consider as sin. If you're not becoming fruitful, then you're not. Then that's missing the mark.
Yeah.
So sorry. So before you continue away with points, I kind of want to make this more of a conversation. Like points are great, but I really want to talk about this with you guys. So we were kind of discussing this last time in the car, and I want to get both of your guys' takes on this. So part of identity is knowing yourself and knowing God in that, and yeah, just the whole fulfillment of it. But part of what we were talking about last time is there's things in your life that you don't like, right? There's things that you see in other people that it just like pisses you off, it angers you, and you just don't like it, right? But you told me that the things that you actually don't like in others is your lack of identity, and it's things that you actually don't like about yourself. So, question, have you ever felt like that at all? Like, have you ever seen somebody and just been like, man, like, I hate that this person is, like, so lazy. Or I hate that this person doesn't do this, doesn't read or doesn't do these things. And it angers you, like, it bothers you. But in reality, those might be things that you don't like about yourself. And the only reason I bring that up is because when we were talking about that last time, it really made me think about myself. Like sometimes, like when I see people or talk to people, I'm like, man, like why can't this person just like stop being scared and open up this business? Or why can't this person just like suck it up and do this or take this leap of faith? And I'm like, shoot, like these things that bother me in others is what bothers me about myself. Because like I'm scared to take that leap of faith, like I'm scared to open up that business. So it just made me think like, man, like it's that lack of identity and those insecurities that you see in other people are actually about yourself. David?
Man, I never really thought of it that way, but it's coming to my mind today that I was also listening to another message that Dr. Miles Monroe was talking about that. I don't remember the exact wording, but he was saying that there are some things that you do have to hate, you know, like there are certain things that you have to hate so that you can be willing to change them, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I think that you're saying that, though, and I reflect while you say it. It's true, you know, a lot of times we can, I guess, hate things about other people, and we may actually have those same characteristics, too, and in a fact, that we're hating that towards someone else, in a way it's kind of just giving us an excuse to not change, you know, because you see you're just pointing out someone else's flaws, you know, when you should really hate certain things about yourself, you know, and get back to our identity. Basically, we should hate the fact that we're not who we're supposed to be, you know.
In my case, I'm just trying to remember if I've ever been that way, to be honest with you. I've always been a self-reflector. So when I see something that bothers me, I always check internally first, and I've done that for so many years to make sure that, like you're saying, that I don't have that same issue. I read a Bible verse such a long time ago where it says that before you even try to correct your brother, make sure that you remove the log that's in your eye, right? Because sometimes we want to look at the speck or the things that this other person is doing, but we carry a big log in our eye, or we're guilty of the same thing we're criticizing. So before we criticize people, we gotta be able to kind of look at internally. So I've always looked internally to myself before I ever say, hey, look at this lazy guy or look at this other person, because I'm like, I better make sure that I'm not lazy either. And I better make sure that I'm not doing this thing that I'm criticizing about. And that has helped me greatly, because God never sent me to fix you or fix anybody else. God always sends you to fix yourself. Like God is in the business of allowing us to reflect personally so that we can fix ourselves. He didn't allow you to see somebody else's fault to correct somebody else's fault. I think that God allows you to see somebody else's fault because somehow, some way, you are guilty of it too. So you need to correct it and you need to fix it. So like for example, if you're I know, since we're just going into this conversation, I know that we had this conversation a couple of months ago where you were saying that you just felt a certain way, and I'm like, okay, why do you feel a certain way? It's like, why do you feel this way? Well, because I feel that I'm more capable, I feel that I'm more this, and I'm like, okay, then if you feel that way, then why don't you do it?
Right.
Why don't you just activate and you go out there and you become fruitful and you become productive and you do all
Right.
this stuff? Why are you hating because somebody else is being productive and you're not?
Right.
You know, so in reality, what God was showing you that you're not as productive as you think you are.
Right.
So instead of looking at the other person as being productive, and even if you think that you're smarter than them, you could be smarter than them.
Right.
That's not the problem. They're just productive and you're not.
Right.
So how many people are? I don't want to use this. 'Cause the word is not dumb. There's not that they're not dumb.
Right.
It doesn't exist. It just means that they're go-getters. They go out there. They don't know what they're doing, but they figure it out and get it done.
They're just action oriented. They just go. They
right.
Don't think
and,
about.
and
yeah.
basically, like even in the business where I'm at now in my job, God taught me this many years ago. You're never going to know everything, but it doesn't matter whether you know something or you don't know something. That what God wants to see is if you can use your creativity, your productivity to figure it out and get it done.
Right.
So he doesn't care whether you know or not. He just wants to know if you're willing to solve it, if you're willing to go out there and make it happen. That's all he cares about. And that's where a lot of people don't really activate in that area. They just rather like, look at this person, they're so dumb, and I'm smarter than them, I could do more than them. Yeah, but why is he making $100,000 and you're making 50?
Right. Yeah.
You see, and you want to say that they're dumb, that you're smarter. No, they're more productive than you.
Yeah.
So sometimes God is just showing you, hey, you might think you're smart, but you're not that smart, because their productivity shows
Right.
in numbers. And like I said, going back to what we do, what we say is numbers don't lie.
Right.
I don't care what you say
Yeah.
or what excuse you tell me. The numbers don't lie.
Right.
That's what you are.
Yeah.
So the same thing is in our Christian walk. The fruits of the Spirit is what matters.
Right.
I don't care what you tell me. If I can't see the fruit, you don't have it.
Right.
If you don't have peace, if you don't have love, if you don't have joy, if you don't have self-control, if you don't have humbleness, if you don't have these things, and that's the fruit of the Holy Spirit, then how can you tell me that you and the Holy Spirit are friends?
Right. Yeah. That's good.
You can lie to yourself all you want. But if those fruits are not there, they're simply not there.
Right.
Right?
David, anything?
Yeah, no, I mean, like we said, I mean, we have to be fruitful, we have to be
Yeah.
fruitful. We have to, I've become less critical, but I mean, it's something that sometimes, I don't know, like you said, maybe it's because of that, because you're not reflecting, and so you're trying to point out flaws in other people. But as we've learned more and more, like you said, I mean, there's been Bible verses that we've read, and I'm just like, I can't be focusing on other people's flaws when I have to work on my own flaws. Like I have to become above reproach, so that way
Right.
I can say, like, then I can do stuff out of love, because a lot of times we're being critical out of hate, because we hate certain things or whatever. But the only time that you can really help someone is if you're being critical, I think, out of love, and when you actually have a solution for them. You can't criticize someone and then not be able to help them
Offer
fix
a
their
solution.
problem.
Right.
Now, let me share something with you guys about criticism that helped me out. Like, for example, I'm a very sarcastic guy. Like, I love sarcasm. It's just me. But I stopped being sarcastic, or I started catching myself in the sarcasm, because not everybody understands sarcasm. My sarcasm used to upset people. It was funny to me, but it wasn't funny for people. And my wife would always correct me, and she would always tell me, she's like, Halton, stop being sarcastic. It's not okay. People don't like it. I'm like, but, it's not my fault that they don't understand it. But I like it. I enjoy it. And then I read a book by Bishop Tudor Bismarck. And he touched on sarcasm, and he put it in a way where I'm like, oh, shoot, I got to stop. Because he said sarcasm is another form of criticism without presenting a solution.
Right.
So you're using sarcasm, a joke, to belittle somebody else, because in your mind, you just feel maybe a little bit more intelligent, so you're giving them a joke that they're not going to understand.
Right.
and you do it on purpose because you know they're not going to understand it, but you don't do it in a way that is going to help them out. You're doing it as a way of criticism / joke. So he's saying that sarcasm is criticism in disguise. And it doesn't bring any solution. So when I read that, I'm like, you know what? I never really understood it that way, and I never thought about it that way. But then I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? It's right. We throw sarcasm out like that because it's like we see somebody do something, and then we just throw the joke, and people are like, what are you saying? Nothing. You don't get it. You'll get it later or whatever. But we're really criticizing them for what they did. We're really not presenting solution.
Right.
So sarcasm and criticism, the reason why the Bible rejects it, or the Bible tells you not to engage in it, is because you're seeing a problem and you're criticizing it with a joke, but you're not presenting a solution for it. So it is not a constructive criticism. It is something that brings or tears the person down, and it doesn't fix anything or move anything forward. So when I understood that, I'm like, you know what? I got to stop my sarcasm, because like I said, I use sarcasm just as a joke personally for me, not necessarily because I said I wanted to criticize, but it is criticism. And I have to, I have to, catch myself and be able to understand that even though I don't mean it in a certain way, it is delivered in a certain way. So I just have to stop the criticism, and I have to stop the sarcasm to protect not only myself, but also to be able to protect the other individual. If I have something to say, I don't criticize, or I don't throw sarcasm anymore. Now I just say, hey, this is what I see, this is the problem, and this is the solution. Why don't we work on the solution? So this is another key, that Bishop Tudor said. Only bring, if you're gonna bring up a problem, make sure you also come with the solution. If you don't have a solution to the problem, keep your mouth shut.
That's good.
Because we like to say, look, you're doing this wrong, so how can we fix this? I don't know. Then shut up. That's basically what he's saying. Because it's true, because we're very good at looking at problems. But God doesn't want us to look at problems. He wants us to bring a solution to the problems. So if we're going to bring out a problem, and for example, let's say somebody has bad character. It's not good enough to say, hey, you got bad character. Because that doesn't solve anything. That just kind of will bring tension probably, or just cause awkwardness, or just cause, whatever it is. But if you're like, hey, I see that you respond this way every time this situation pops up, how can we help you overcome that? What's really the root of the problem? So let's engage the solution versus just saying you have a bad attitude.
Read a book.
And I mean, and it makes me think of a couple different things. First is that, we've learned that we have to be able to cover each other's blind spots, So it's not healthy to just point someone's blind spots out, but not want to cover them for them, especially if we're doing these things out of love, And then secondly is, man, I kind of lost it right now. But that was one of the things I was thinking of, because that's another thing that I had to work on myself, I wouldn't want someone to just criticize me. Like, I know I have certain weaknesses, but in a way, we're supposed to cover each other,
Right. Yeah. And then
that's a lack of identity. That's why identity is important, because once you know who you are and you understand how you function, then that covering portion comes into effect.
Exactly.
Because you won't criticize your brother or other people. What you do is like, let me figure out a way how to cover them.
Right.
They might not even understand that you're covering them, because most people don't even understand what that means.
Right.
And sorry, and now I remembered. So the other thing too is that we have to learn how to see people. We have to also see the identity in other people and see them as a finished product. Like we've learned, we have to be able to see people as their finished product, knowing that right now maybe they're suffering from lack of identity, but their true identity comes from God. So we have to treat them as so.
Yeah, and then I was just going to say that too, when you said lack of identity, because that's what it really is. The fact that you don't see God in you prevents you from seeing God in others. So you treat people the same way that you treat yourself. And because you can see God in you, you don't see the God in others.
So Genesis 1:26, let us make man in our image and our likeness so that they can have dominion. That is kind of like a bedrock Bible verse for House 633 because
Right.
we always have to go back to that Bible verse to remind ourselves constantly how God created us. And that word image is very important because everybody bears the image of God, believers and non-believers. Whether they believe it, accepted Christ, and they're in the church, or whether they're in the world, they bear the image of God. So we can't say that we love God, who we can't see, and not love the person that we can see.
Right.
So if we say that we love God, then we have to be able to love everybody that bears His image.
Right.
So, and that comes with understanding identity. Because now that I understand my identity and I know that I have His image, I have to also understand that you have His image, you have His image, and I gotta love you guys regardless of your current situation,
Right.
circumstances, the things that you're battling with, and I have to love it. I mean, I don't have to put up with stuff, but I gotta love you. So,
Right.
love and putting up with stuff are two different things.
Yeah, and then tying that into what we were just talking about, but this whole lack of identity is so vital in the body of Christ, and it's really what keeps us from advancing. Because how we were talking about right now, seeing the image of God in yourself and in others, but part of what we were talking about, like being the solution, we don't realize that we are the solution. This whole lack of identity stops us from becoming the solution that the world needs. Because as we know, with purpose and assignment and identity, all of us here were placed to fix a problem. All of us carry a solution that the world needs. So this whole fact that we don't have identity, we lack it, so therefore we can't see the image of God in others. We also don't see the solution that they bring. So therefore we think that people are dispensable. So now we get into situations where, like, let's say if David's struggling with something and I may not be struggling with the same thing. Now I say, like, oh, forget David, let's just forget about him because he's this and this, but we don't realize it's like, hey, first off, he's made in the image of God. Second of all, he has a solution that I need, because all of us in the body of Christ, we need each other. Right. How David was saying, we not only cover each other, but we have to work together and grow together. So this whole lack of identity really stops us from bringing out the best in other people and really bringing out the solution that they have for the world.
So that brings me to, like I said, I know we're not talking about points because this is not a teaching, but it goes right into what you're saying. And it says that people go through life not knowing their origins or the power trapped inside of them. So there is and it goes to what you're saying. Everybody bears the image of God. Everybody is carrying a solution to the problems of their generation. And there's a lot of people that go through life not knowing who they are. So all that power that is trapped inside of them will never be released. Mm-hmm. It's like that tree that never produces a fruit that bears seed. Right. So there's a lot of people out there that are full of power, full of potential. They have so much to give, but because they don't know who they are, they abuse their life through alcohol. They abuse their life through smoking or fornication, adultery, or whatever the sin of choice there is, and they die not releasing that seed for the next generation. Right. So it's very important for us to be able to come back to our identity, to our origins, because there's a lot of people that don't feel valuable because they didn't have the career that they wanted. Right. They don't have the money that they want in their bank account. They're not driving the car that they want to drive. They don't live in the neighborhood that they want to live. And all of these things affect the way that they think and they believe, not knowing that their true value comes by coming back to their origins, to their creator, because we were created with an intrinsic value, because we carry inside of us the solution to so many people's problems.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys got to say about that.
I think David had a point.
Well, I was just doing a little bit of reading to follow up, and I know you touched this verse this last Sunday where, we've been talking about this, that then God said, let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds will then produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came. Mm-hmm. So one thing is, that, the power is in the fruit and in the seed of the fruit. A tree that doesn't produce any fruit, like we've learned, the fruit and the seed is for the next generation, so you will die never having produced anything further past than past yourself, which is one of our mandates to produce and be fruitful. And then we've also learned that a bad tree can't produce good fruit, and a good tree can't produce bad fruit. But if you are a bad tree, let's say you basically, or I don't know if maybe this is a question, but if you're a bad tree and you produce bad fruit, then you're only going to produce after your own kind too. So I had this thought earlier, which ties into this, is that like too many times, and I'm sure because our parents at some point struggled from the same lack of identity, they want you to be something that they're not. They want you to be something better than they ever were, which of course we want to be, but they, in a way, like they transfer their identity to you, so they can only produce after their own kind. And just like us, if we want to reproduce, we will only be able to reproduce after our own kind.
That is such a good point, because a lot of people don't understand that the reason this generation is struggling is because the generation that was supposed to give them identity wasn't able to transfer that identity to them. So they were also struggling with their identity. If we look at our parents, our parents, all they knew was how to survive, how to go to work, put food on the table, and just take care as best possible. But they were really never able to tell you who you truly were. So we grew up not understanding who we were, and we became victims of our circumstances, victims of the hood, victims of gangs, victims of fatherlessness, because we didn't really know who we truly were. What we were told was, your father didn't love you, so he didn't, so I didn't stay with him, or and they start putting all this animosity between you and your father, and it creates a bigger conflict in identity, because your identity comes from your father. If you don't have a connection to the father, then how can you understand who you truly are? And this is not a knock on any single mother. Single mothers do amazing jobs. I mean, they step up where the father just walked away. But a mother cannot give you identity, unfortunately. They can love you, they can care for you, they can nurture you, they can do so many amazing things, but the one thing that we need the most is the one thing that they can do, and that's give you identity. Because your identity always comes from the Father. It does not come from anywhere else. So when the Father is missing, what God does is he steps in and he supplies what we call spiritual fathers. Spiritual fathers now take the lead and take the position, or fill in the gap between your biological father and you, so that you can find a way to reconnect back to your true father, which is God. So a spiritual father never takes the place of your biological father, but what he does is he now becomes a bridge to reconnect you to your true father, which is God. Because if you're able to reconnect back to the Creator, God the Father, then you don't need anybody else anymore. And that's the goal of coming to church, and that's the goal of having mentorship. That's the goal of understanding the kingdom and understanding identity. It is not for you to necessarily be just submitted to a man, which it is necessary for that to happen, but the end goal is for you to finally reconnect back to the Spirit of God, where God is not going to be your father, where God is not going to be your teacher, where God is now going to do everything in your life, and he's going to erase your past and be able to recreate your future to what he had designed it originally. So it is very important.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then I just wanted to touch back on the question that you asked us, because as you guys were both talking, this came to mind about this like whole thing about being fruitful and be able to multiply. So David and you kind of talked about like the extreme end of like where it was just bad, like all these things that we all face. But I was thinking, I'm like, a lot of people are in that area, but I think a lot of people are also in this area of like of complacency, where we don't understand the difference in being productive and being fruitful, where we don't understand the difference in fulfilling purpose and just doing stuff for God. So I think a lot of times, and a lot of people, and I kind of like put myself in that place too, like we do all these things that are good things, that are productive things, that so we serve God, like we play instruments, we serve in worship, we serve in departments at church, but we're still not necessarily fulfilling purpose. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in that like gray area of like you're doing good things, like you're past the sin and you're past like all these things. So now you're working for God, but you're still not fulfilling purpose. Like you still haven't been fruitful. Like yes, you're being productive and you're doing great things, but you still need like that little more to get to that point where like okay, now you're actually fulfilling what you were designed here and were put on earth for. So I think it's important for a lot of us to realize and ask ourselves that is like, hey, like I know I may not be dealing with like this like extreme bad stuff of like I'm not a drunk anymore, I don't do all these things, but hey, like am I truly being fruitful? Am I fulfilling purpose? Like have I really acknowledged my identity 100% in God? Because if we're not, then it's kind of like that thing of like, okay, yes, you casted out demons, yes, you did miracles in my name, but I still don't know you because you didn't fulfill what I put you on earth to do. You still weren't able to realize who you really were.
And just real quick, that reminds me of I was listening to the second part in the series where you were talking about the blueprint, you know? So we have to really understand what our blueprint is, because we can be doing great things, you know? Like, let's just say, for an example, blueprint is like, okay, a hospital is a great thing, you're healing sick people, whatnot, but what if you were designed to be a library or what, you know, like whatever, like if you're not being what you were designed to be, then as we were I was listening in that message, it's like when God comes down to identify you, he's not going to be able to identify you because he's like, that was supposed to be a library, where is it at? Why is there a hospital right there?
Yeah, that's really good.
No, that is good, and that's what happens to people because in 1 hour we can't explain all of these things. So we encourage people to go back to the series and listen to the messages and even go even further, because we've even touched things that we won't be able to touch today. But I do want to press one thing, because we've talked about it in previous series, and the reason it's important for us to be able to come back to our identity and to reconnect with God is because we need to be able to reproduce after our own kind. We touched it this Sunday. We're either producing kingdom things or we're either producing tares. That's the only thing that God recognizes. Either you're being productive and reproducing after your own kind, meaning you're releasing the kingdom of God here on earth, or you're not. There is no in between. So the only way for us to be able to be identified in the eyes of God is, what are you releasing? What are you being productive in? He's not going to come here and ask you about your business, and he's not going to come and ask you about your house or your cars, and he's not going to come and ask you about your job and how much money you have in your bank account. Those things are good things. I mean, God appreciates that you were also productive in other areas, but he's going to come and ask you, I put a seed, fruit inside of you that you needed to be productful with, and that you needed to release. Did you release it? Did you know, the Apostle Paul put it this way, and I really like it, because he says, when he was talking to Timothy, he's like, you know what, I have finished my race. You know, I have been poured out as a drink offering, meaning there is nothing left inside of me. Everything that I was carrying, it was poured out, and I left it here. And now that everything that I had inside of me is out, I'm done. There is no reason for me to continue ministry anymore. Timothy, I urge you now to be firm, to remember what I taught you. Don't let anybody tell you that because you're young, you know, that you're not qualified. Teach, exhort. Doesn't matter who you're teaching or who you're exhorting. You know, preach in due time and out of time. Fulfill your assignment, because I'm done. There is nothing more for me to give. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. We have to deliver something in our generation, and once we deliver it, we have fulfilled our assignment, and then we can move on with our lives and do everything else that we like, per se. Because John the Baptist's ministry, 6 months. He tried to stay in ministry, they cut off his head. So guess what? I'm not trying to go over what I was assigned to do. I just want to fulfill my assignment. I want to be able to produce the fruit that was inside of me, and once it's released, I'm done.
That's good.
And I know we're talking about fruit, but it also reminds me of another message I was listening to, and we've talked about succession, but it's a relay race, so you can't run past that marker. Once you reach that marker, you hand the baton to the next person, and they have to run the next leg.
That's the seed.
Yeah.
You pass it to the next generation. But what if there is no seed, no baton?
Right.
And that also, that's what I'm saying, is very important, because if you don't understand your identity, you don't understand your assignment, there is a certain amount of time that I have. And when that time is up, I have to pass on the baton. Even if I have juice to keep on going, I need to stop.
Right.
And I need to give it to the person that's next. It's like David was saying, that relay race. I'm pretty sure that the guy that starts the race, he can go the whole freaking lap. But it's not his job to do the whole lap.
Right.
His job is to be able to pass it successfully to the next person, and that makes everybody win. So my responsibility here is to be able to run my race, and your responsibility is to be ready, because the other guy that's coming, the first guy didn't train him. They
Right.
trained together, and he was
Right.
just ready to receive it. And my question to the people that I'm mentoring, that I'm following, is: are you going to be ready, or are you going to drop the baton?
Right. Yeah.
Because if the baton gets dropped, the whole team gets disqualified.
Right. That is so good.
So, I look at Henry, and then I look at David, I look at you, I look at Noah, I look at all these people that God is sending me here, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my part when I pass the baton, because I will pass it, because believe me, I ain't going to do more than what I have to do. I ain't in the job to become a superhero. I'm just here to be able to train the next.
Yeah.
Once the next is there and they can take the baton, if you're not ready, it's your fault.
Right.
It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing about being able to reproduce after your own kind and being able to produce that seed.
Right.
Because I'm already activating. I'm already solving the problems of my generation. I'm not going to solve them all. You guys are coming right behind me. You guys are carrying more juice than me.
Right.
You guys
Yeah.
are the newer models. You guys are upgraded, updated. You guys have all the stuff that I don't have. So don't tell me that I can push this far and you can't. You were designed and created by God to push more than me.
That's good.
So that's why Paul was telling Timothy, don't worry about you being young. I passed the baton.
Supposed to be.
You're supposed to be young, and you're supposed to be strong, and you're supposed to be able, and don't let anybody look down on you simply because you're young. You have the juice. Take it. Push it. Don't say, oh, it's too early for me. Ain't no such thing as early.
We're behind.
You're late.
Yeah.
You're late
we're
already.
behind.
Imagine going to work, and they want to pay you $120,000. I don't know, that's too much for me. It's never too much for you.
Right.
You'll take it.
Yeah.
You work for it. But what do I have to do for this $120,000? Well, you're going to have to solve X, Y, Z problem. You have to deal with headaches. You have to deal with this stuff. Oh, then I don't want it.
Right.
That's what most people do in ministry. They're like, there's too many problems. I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to cancel vacations. I don't want to do all this stuff. So guess what? I'll put you on hold because I don't know if I really want to do that. I'm like, you're stopping the team.
Right.
And like I said, you're not stopping me because I'm moving.
Right.
What I'm saying is, you're the next.
Right.
The baton is coming your way. So
Be like, no, I want to run fourth.
I know.
what exactly? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But fourth in a relay
Is the
race is the
anchor.
most important
Yeah.
person
You're the closer.
because they're the closer. We don't want a weak person to close.
Right.
You want the strongest to close, so you're going to put them last.
Right.
And the team chooses who's the strongest. Not
Yeah.
you don't choose yourself like, oh, I'm the strongest. Like
Yeah.
That's why when you're training, there is no room for getting offended. There is
Right.
no room for sensitivity. There is no room for you getting upset because you're training with lions. Have you ever seen lions train? Go the Discovery Channel, brother. Go turn that on and go look at how lions train. They fight like if they're gonna kill each other, but they're not killing each other. They're just developing strength and strategies to be able to make the pride stronger. So they don't get mad because the other lion smacks him across the face and he bites him and he flips him over. It's just like you shouldn't get mad when I come in and say, "Hey, what the hell are you doing? You should already be a teacher. I should not be telling you that you're saved."
Right.
You should already be mentoring other people and not coming here looking for mentorship.
Right.
Oh, why you treat me so bad? You're so mean. I'm like, no, you're the closer.
Yeah.
I need you to close, and I don't need a baby.
Right.
And it only takes a specific amount of time for a tree to grow into its full
Right.
bloom, you know. So when someone that's already fully bloomed comes and tells you, why are you not here, like, it only takes you this much time. If you spend time in the living water this much amount of time, then you should already be there. But obviously you're not spending time, you're not getting the water that the tree needs, so that's why your growth is stunted.
Right, and then kind of going back to like identity, it's like, again, it's all lack of identity, because like how David was saying, like if you're a full grown tree that's already being fruitful and producing, you see the full tree in us. Like you see us for what we truly are, but we don't yet. So for you, yeah, it's like, what are you doing? Like, I see you here, but you're like here because this is holding you back. Like really, like this little fear is what's holding you from being here. So again, like, yeah, just going back to the identity, it's like once you're there, like you see other people for where they're supposed to be, for who they really are.
Now let me just share another thing that came to my mind, which is very important. And this now not only is about identity, knowing our roles, because everybody has a role. One day you're on top, the other day you're at the bottom, but it doesn't matter because you're part of a team, and you have to be able to accept being at top sometimes, and you have to accept sometimes being at the bottom. But it does being at the bottom, being at the top doesn't make you better than anybody. It just makes you a team player because you do whatever's best for the team. Now, we as you guys, this is more of an advice for you guys, and just so you guys can understand this. When a lion gets old and he doesn't have the same strength anymore, and sometimes you have these young lions that come in, and they're young, they're strong, they're capable, they're powerful, and they see this old lion just kind of like sitting down there, and they forget that this lion protected the pride, allowing them to grow, allowing them to develop, hunted with the
Allowing
pride
them to get to the strength that they're at.
that
now.
they're at, but he's still the king. He's still the lion. What we have sometimes in I was gonna say industry, but it's ministry, and it feels like an industry sometimes. But is that we dishonor the generation that came before us, and if like I said, go back to the Discovery Channel. You see this lion sitting under the tree, sleeping 18 hours a day. And everybody might think that this lion is lazy. Everybody might think that, what the hell is this lion doing? Yeah, it's like, I'm here, chasing the zebra and chasing all of this stuff, and this lion is just sitting down there sleeping all day. And when I kill it, then he comes to eat, and they start, criticizing the lion. But that's because they're just hunting. But then when other lions from other prides try to come and invade, this lazy lion gets up and defends the entire territory and fends everybody off. And the reason why these other lions don't come in here is because of that lion that is sleeping under the tree. That apparently he's not doing anything, but he's keeping everything together. So sometimes we look at the older generation that they already fought, that they already did all this stuff, and then we just see them like, what are they doing? Like, no. Thank you.
Or even, I think of it, when you're saying that, I put it together with the analogy that we've been using a lot right now, is trees and being fruitful. Like, you might see an apple tree at the end of its life, it doesn't produce anymore, like it's dying out, and you might think like, man, what a waste of a tree, but little do you know, it produced thousands of apples throughout its whole lifetime, and it's already completed its fullness, So you can't criticize that because it's no longer its season to produce fruit. You know, it's now the next tree's season to produce.
Right. Yeah, and then I mean, it's not off topic, but kind of following that, it's like bridging the gap in these generations is so important because yes, the older generation might be in a different season, but as the younger generation is growing and being like the strength and now getting ready to take the next May baton, it's like we need to remember that we don't have the experience that the older generation has and the wisdom that they've acquired throughout all these years. And I think that's where we need to bridge that gap and understand like, hey, like, yes, I may be in my prime and I may be physically strong, I have energy, I can do all these things, but I don't have the experience or the wisdom that the older generation that came before me has. So I need to still be close to them and ask for their wisdom so that I don't fall into mistakes that I could have avoided, so that I don't run into situations that I could have simply just by asking a question to somebody else, I could have avoided it.
Yeah, and I mean I know we're like it goes all over, you know, but that also goes back into what we've learned about, you know, being submitted, and then once you're released to do what you need, you know, once you're released to fulfill your purpose or whatever, like, yeah, you have to stay submitted, get that wisdom, and then that older lion will be like, okay, you're ready. Like, just like a lion, I'm sure, and I've seen some Discovery Channel, but while they're young, you know, they don't send them to go hunt, they don't send them to do these things, but once they're ready, like, okay, go. Like, he doesn't follow you, you're out there on your own now, and because I know that you're going to be able to handle yourself.
Right.
And another thing, I mean, we're closing down because of time, but another thing that I wanted to touch with that is something very important that Dr. Miles said many years ago. And he says, there are people that don't need me to teach them anything. There are people that are very capable of handling themselves and doing all the things that are necessary for them to be productive and be successful. The only thing they need is my presence.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I'm there allows them to be able to do what they need to do.
Right.
So in many cases, sometimes I'll speak on my end and to this accord as well. It's of course I learned from Dr. William as well a lot of things. I honor that man, I love him, I respect him, but most of the time all I need is his presence.
Right.
Just being around him, just the fact that I know that he's there is enough for me to be able to activate and move and do things with confidence, simply because I know I have a place to fall back.
Right.
But all the stuff that I'm doing it. But it's his presence that allows me to do this thing. And that's what Dr. Monroe was saying. It's like, you know, I told my wife and my kids and everybody's moving and doing their thing. Why? Simply because of my presence.
Right.
In my the covering. And you might say, but what does he do? Remove me and watch what happens.
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand.
Right.
You remove a certain thing and then you watch what happens.
Yeah.
And that's why covering is so important, because you remove it and then everything falls apart. And
Right.
now you realize, now I understand what you were doing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, why doesn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Because I don't have to do that.
Right.
What I do is more important.
Mm-hmm.
That this covering allows everybody to function.
Right.
I don't tell them how to function sometimes, and I don't tell them step by step do this, but just the fact that I'm there, it just allows them to function normal.
Yeah.
And that's what Dr. Monroe was saying. I'm like, I didn't understand that, but when I came into contact with that, and I'm like, you know what? And I started understanding how this covering thing worked. I'm like, you know what, man, this allows me just to work.
Right.
Allows me to move. It gives me the confidence. It gives me the peace. It gives me the just the self-esteem, all the stuff that I need, just because of the presence.
Right. The only reason this big old huge redwood tree was able to grow is because of the soil. That's
Because of the soil.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not. It's if we were just to understand that simple thing, we will stop questioning people that are doing so much for us.
Right.
Because sometimes we say,
I feel confident in doing certain things at work, you know, because I know, like, I got a manager that's got my back, you know, like,
Right.
I know I'm doing the right thing, but just in case, if I ever doubt, I can come back to someone and say, hey, man, like, this is going on. What do you think, or whatever? And I feel more confident,
Right. Yeah.
It's just the way that it works. But it goes back to identity.
Right.
Everything goes back to identity. Because if you don't know who you are, you might feel undervalued, and you might feel less than because you don't have the title or the position. Like, to me, titles and positions have never mattered, but they do matter. When I say they don't matter, what I mean is that I don't let them go to my head.
Right.
I'm still the same person, whether I'm here, or there. It's the same thing for me. I still treat people with respect. And in every place that I go, regardless, there are people that are smarter than me, that know more than me, that are more capable than me, but they can't do what they do without me.
Right.
So it's not that they need me or not. They need me anyway. They don't know it, but I know it.
Right.
So I just allow them to be what they do. Let them be.
Yeah.
And I will continue to function, and I'll continue to cover. And that's the way that it works, not only in business, it works at a job, it works inside the church. If you understand, everybody might say anybody can preach. If you ask me, I don't think people can teach the kingdom the way that I teach the kingdom.
Right.
No.
I second that.
So it's not a knock on anybody. I love listening to other preachers that teach on the kingdom, and they preach, and I believe they're really good. But I don't believe that they teach it the way that I teach it either. So,
Right.
So if you remove me from here, it'll change.
Yeah.
So it might feel like, what is this guy doing? Like, no, I'm doing something.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, remember, you're the next.
Right.
So if you talk smack about me, they'll talk smack about you. Because you're the one who's next.
Right.
So you cover the one that's there now.
Right.
Because when you're there, you're going to want covering too.
Right.
Because everybody thinks I can do it better until it's your turn to do it.
Right.
And you can't do it any better.
That is so true.
So, it's been a great conversation. Thank you guys for joining us. It's been such a good conversation, and good to be back here live and engaging every single one of you guys today. We miss being here live. We are going to be doing these lives once a month now, because this allows us to kind of train on the back end in private, so that we can come back here and deliver better messages and better develop ourselves. So we thank you for joining us today, and just say bye.
Yeah, so thank you guys for joining us. If you guys have any questions, anything further that you want to ask us, just DM us, DM our pastor, DM us with all your questions. We're here to help you guys. We're all in different sections of our journey, but we're all headed towards the same goal. So you'd be so surprised how many people are actually in the same position that you guys may be in. And even if they're not, then that means that they're ahead of you, which is good, because you want advice from somebody that's ahead of you, not in the same position as you. So thank you guys for all that. Feel free to share this page, leave your comments, like it, and then I'll have David share how they can partner with us.
You can partner with us by sowing your honor seed into the kingdom here at House 633. You can do so via Zelle, which is honorseed@house633.com. There's a couple people here in person. They can give in person if they like. But it's mostly, also by sharing this message, of course, liking, commenting. That also will be able to plant this seed, which is the word, into other people's lives. Yeah. So that helps just as much.
Yeah. Amen. To the King. We'll see you guys next month.